Welcome to the Hermetic Astrology Podcast. I'm Gary Caton in Waynesville, North Carolina. You can find me on the web at dreamastrologer.com. And today is Thursday, April 9th, 2020. And it appears that maybe there's some good news, relatively speaking, on the horizon. If you've been following the eastern horizon in the morning sky, you will have seen the great gathering of the three superior planets, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And as I spoke about last time, this was actually the trio that was blamed for the Black Death back in 1345 by astrologers. Mars intruded on the rare Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and it was in an air sign. And Mars being the planet of pestilences in general, and air being, the way that they thought things were spread back then. That's how they made sense of it. And so if we use that lens, then we can expect perhaps there should be some easing in that situation, because Mars has now moved well past Jupiter, a good bit past Saturn, and in fact is now starting to make a midpoint picture where Mars and Jupiter with Saturn right in the middle. And I'll share my screen to show you what that looks like in the sky. By the way, if you're listening on the podcast, you can always check into the YouTube channel to see the visuals that I share with people as I'm talking. So yeah, looking east in the morning, in the southeast, this morning we would have seen Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars just about spaced out equidistant from each other. And so Mars, this is really the final interaction of Mars with this pair, in the sense that after this, he's going to be moving along, and he's going to be further from them than they are from each other. So they'll be a pair and he'll be a separate entity. So there's this separating influence of Mars. Yes, Mars will still be co-present in Aquarius. We will have both malefics and Aquarius for some time until Saturn retrogrades. So that probably suggests that we'll still be figuring this thing out for some time, right? But it does suggest an easing of the worst part of it with Mars moving on. The other thing is that if we look at just in terms of the dignities, Mars is going to be moving into the bounds of the two benefics. After Mars gets to 7 degrees of Aquarius, Mars moves into the bounds of Venus. And Mars will be applying to a trine with Venus. It's what's called a refrenated trine. They never actually make an exact trine, because then Venus stations and turns retrograde. And nevertheless, at this point, Venus is getting closer to Mars. And with Mars in her bounds, that's what's known as a trine with reception. Venus is receiving Mars into her domain, into her bounds in Aquarius. And this is positive. Anytime you get the benefics involved, that's good news. And then Mars, after he moves to 13 degrees, Mars moves into the bounds of Jupiter. So I'm guessing that we're finally going to get to see an easing of some of the horrible news that we've been having over the past month, and maybe a somewhat lessening of those conditions. But we're not out of the woods yet, right? And so I wanted to share with y'all some very basic protection energies that are available to us through the sky, through the fixed stars. And one of these you can see in this sky shot off to the right of Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. If you're up early and you see them in the southeast, pretty much towards the south, you'll see the constellation of Scorpius, the great scorpion. And the bright red star there is one of the four royal stars, makes a cross in the heavens, is Antares, Cor Scorpionis, the heart of the scorpion. And what's really interesting about this star is that mythologically, it was sent by Gaia in response to a boast by Orion that he could or would kill any or every living thing. The great hunter, got a little bit out of control, and she sent the scorpion to get him. And that's the reason why, as the scorpion rises, Orion sets, or that's mythologically, the scorpion is chasing Orion around the sky. As Orion rises, the scorpion sets. So he only gets to come into the sky as she's leaving. And as she's entering the sky, he has to leave, you see? So there's this interesting dynamic between these two constellations, and it makes every bit of sense in the world why come the Middle Ages, when you have the flowering of astrological magic, it would have been made perfect sense that, for instance, Agrippa says that in 3 books of occult philosophy, that Antares, in addition to giving understanding and memory, it aids against evil spirits, drives them away, and binds them even. So this driving away of Orion we can see. And I would guess that if we aren't complete literalists, or even if we are, there, some people would feel that this virus is certainly an evil influence or a negative influence. And I would suggest that Antares might be good generally at driving negativity away. And so, with that said, there's an interesting opportunity coming on Saturday morning, as the really bright moon is going to be coming over top of Antares. This will be a wonderful time to practice this magic. So if we zoom this forward a couple days, we'll see the moon's going to be pretty much right over top of Antares on the morning of April 11th. And that'll be a really bright moon, and the bright star underneath, a little to the left, will be Antares. And so, generally speaking, in fact, any morning, if you get up and go out and you can call on Antares for protection, it would be best at around, unfortunately, it's like really super early when Antares is culminating. It's about 4:30 a.m. East Coast time when Antares is culminating. So if you wanted to do it, if you're like if early morning hours are not happening, you could move it to when Antares is rising, which is about 11:30 or so. You could do it then, or you could do it as Antares is culminating in the morning. And then if you want to get really specific about it, when the moon comes and conjoins that star, you see the fixed stars were thought to be in a heaven, a sphere located farther from the planets, because they don't move and the planets do. And so, and quite accurately, they are much farther than the planets are, right? Much, much farther. And so the fixed stars were seen to be in a heaven or a sphere closer to God, God being in the highest heaven. And so there's this idea that the faster moving the planet is, the closer to Earth it is. The moon being the fastest of all, is in the sphere right next to the Earth. Once again, absolutely true. The moon is closer than anything else to the Earth. And so because of the proximity to the Earth, the moon was able to take this starry energy and sort of facilitate or form a conduit into the material world and assist in the materialization of that energy. So when you have the moon conjunct, technically you can use the sextile or the trine as well. But I mean, the visual power of the conjunction to me just speaks volumes to it being preferable. And in this case, because the moon is not, it's past the opposition to Venus in early Gemini, and it doesn't have any squares. There's nothing, well, there's a wide square to Neptune. But generally speaking, there's no close squares or oppositions to interfere with that materialization of the energy. So this is a wonderful, this would even be good for a potentially a permanent talisman. I don't know that I would go with a permanent talisman because Aquarius is rising at this time and you've got Mars and Saturn in Aquarius. So I'm not sure that I would go with that. But at the very least, we can petition this star very powerfully at this time to drive away this negative energy and keep it away from us. So this is a really good illustration of the tremendously practical applications of astrological magic. All right, I'm going to pause for a second. So I just want to put in a quick plug here, but I'm also going to be doing a giveaway, so don't go anywhere. So this is just one of many of magical opportunities that I outline in my monthly forecast for my subscribers. Recently, I made Hydra talismans, which are also protective, in addition to being about wealth and wisdom. That's a nice triple play, right? I made solar talismans. These are for the sun and the second decan of Aries. You can see there's like the Three of Wands. That's the tarot card that goes with the sun and the second decan of Aries. And there's other opportunities as well. So you might want to think about tuning in. Also, I made algal talismans recently, and those have all sold out. I did give one away to someone who was in need on my member list. And I'm going to give one away to the wider podcast community. And you can see here what I used is a wonderful copper coin that has the face of Medusa on the front. And I used copper specifically because this election that I used had Venus in Taurus and the moon applying to algal. And so the metal associated with Venus being copper, this is a wonderful opportunity. And then on the back, you should be able to see there, if I turn it the right way, there's the glyph for algal, the sigil of the star algal engraved into the back of the talisman. And these are in a pouch along with some diamond, some rough natural diamond, and some mugwort. So I'm going to be giving one of these away to my wider list. Fortunately, my people stepped up and had some generous support for some other ones that I made that are a little more involved. They actually have the diamond and mugwort inside them. Those are already all sold out. But I'm going to be giving one of these away. Last time I asked for people to post a review or interact with the Facebook page, stuff like that, in order to be part of the drawing. Given the circumstances that we're in now, I'm not going to make that a requirement. It's just like a suggested donation. So it's love offering, whatever. If you can, please do. Show your support for the show. But if not, that's fine. I understand. Just send me an email, dreamastrologer@yahoo.com. explaining your situation and why you want to work with algal. I should say that, you know, this is a very powerful star, and you should be, you know, it's basically in Native American terms, it would be called snake medicine, right? So it's the power of transmutation. It's not an easy path to walk. It's a difficult path at times, right? You have to be willing to go into the dark and shed your skin and stuff if you want to work with this energy. But at the same time, it's a very, very powerful protector. So I wanted to offer one of those to my audience, and encourage people, if they can, to think about joining our community here. We call it the Hermetic Hive because it's hive is a group word that starts with an H, right? So, you can have access to all of these magical alignments that I pick out for the month, and the goodies that I craft. You know, these are arts. These are Hermetic arts, and as a Hermetic artist, I'm practicing what I preach, and I'm creating these magical items every month to go along with these things and offering them to my people. But yeah, on a wider level, there's no reason why you can't do the same for yourself. So I want to go back to sharing my screen here and show you a couple other opportunities. If early morning isn't your thing, or late evening, you know, 11:30 is not, you know, and getting sleep is really important to keep your health. There is an opportunity in the evening. So I'm going to bring this around until about now. It'll be very tempting to look to the west in the evening because there's this wonderful alignment between an extremely bright Venus and this red star Aldebaran, and that is a potent pairing for sure. Aldebaran is associated with power and fortune and stuff like that. But as far as protection, the ones to watch for is at the same time that the sun is setting in the west and Venus is coming out along with Aldebaran. If you look the other way to the east, you'll see two very bright stars, Arcturus and Spica, are coming into the sky. They are in technically the same degree of longitude being, you know, just reckoned along the ecliptic, but they're 30 degrees apart in terms of latitude. Arcturus is much higher in the sky towards the north than Spica is. And so if we move this forward, there's Spica and Arcturus. And they, you know, Arcturus is one of the absolute brightest stars in the sky. One way you can find it is if I bring this out, you follow the arc to Arcturus. So the arc of the dipper, the handle stars, how it kind of arcs, it'll point down towards the Arcturus, right? So if you find the dipper, the Big Dipper, and you follow the arc of the handle, the last star in the handle of the dipper, by the way, is also a very protective star, Al-Qaeda, particularly for travelers. But Arcturus is said to be good against fevers, and fever being one of the main symptoms of this virus, I thought, you know, hey, it's worth a shot to work with Arcturus. I want to, yeah, so by the way, each of these stars, they're called Bohemian stars. They have a stone and an herb that goes along with them. And for Arcturus, the stone is jasper and the herb is plantain, which is like wild lettuce. You probably have it in your yard. I have some right in my front yard. It's very common wild plant. It's supposed to be good. You can chew it up and put it on a little cut or a sting or something like that, and it's helpful that way. So it also is supposed to be stops bleeding, right? And that's what this star is supposed to do. It's good. It astringeth the blood, which means that it causes astringent is something that shrinks and causes it to contract. So it stops bleeding and it's good against fevers. So in general, as Arcturus is rising, and that's 26 degrees, 25 degrees of Libra. So if you just put 25 degrees of Libra on your chart program, every day when that rises or culminates, you can work with Arcturus if you can't get out into the sky. If you can get out into the sky, even better, in my opinion. And then now, unfortunately, we can't work with the conjunctions to Arcturus from the moon right now, because then she'll be getting the squares to the stuff in Capricorn. So what we have to do is kind of come at it sideways and work with the sextiles and the trines. So on April 11th at around 8 p.m. Eastern time, the moon in Sagittarius will be sextile Arcturus. And as Arcturus is rising, and that would be a really good opportunity. And then on April 16th, just before 8 p.m., the moon in Aquarius will be trine to Arcturus as Arcturus is rising, and this would be an even better opportunity. And I want to share with you, there's certain symbols that go along. So here's the symbol for Arcturus. This is like it's a sort of a Kabbalistic sigil that goes along. So you can use that sigil along with the along with jasper and plantain, and you can but you can just simply call on Arcturus and ask for it to drive away the fever associated with this virus. Oh, and by the way, the sigil for Antares, if you want to work with Antares, is really interesting. It looks like this. So there's Antares sigil. And it helps if you have something in your natal chart that's near the degrees of these stars. With Antares is about 10 degrees of Sagittarius, and that's near my midheaven. And the first time I worked with Antares, well, actually, it started working with me. Excuse me. It started showing up, and I got called to do some work with Astrology Hub a couple years ago, and the full moon was conjunct Antares, so I did a teaching on it, and it showed up. There was a full moon at UAC, and then there was a new moon when I ended up working for Astrology Hub, and I was like, wow, this star's really speaking to me. So I did a talisman for it later in the year, and it was like within 2 days I had like this huge, very obvious result. I got a lot of new work from astrology.com, and I've been working with them ever since. So, that aspect of understanding and memory that goes, Mercury was involved, so writing was clearly involved. So if you have something in the degrees of these stars, it definitely helps. And I think it definitely helps if, like I said, you form a relationship with them. I had been forming a relationship with Antares over the course of a year before I did that talisman, and I think that's why it worked so well. So having a relationship with the sky and having a relationship with these beings that are these great big balls of fire out in the universe, it can absolutely be something that you can call on in times of need for protection and various things. Spica is a wonderful star that's supposed to be really helpful. I had this star, I used this star one time in a chart for selling a house, and boom, I mean, it sold quickly, full price cash offer. It doesn't get any better than that when you're selling stuff. So I encourage people to take this time, if you can, to get out with the sky and to start forming relationships with some of these stars, because it's definitely something that you can call on for all kinds of different needs. So that's just about it for this time. I wanted to give a brief preview of some of the magic that we're going to be working with next month. We have an Al-Qaeda election, which is a protection. We're also going to be working with Hydra again, which is also protection. Draco. There is a really cool election for Draco next month. The northern, the north pole of the ecliptic is found in Draco. And so all the cultures of the north have this relationship with dragons in their mythology, and it's because there's a dragon circling overhead you know, in the sky. We're going to work with Capella, which is also like a medicinal healing star. We've got a Regulus. Regulus is more for like power and accomplishments and stuff. There's several Mercury and Gemini elections, so I'm definitely going to be making some Mercury talismans for people. Mercury is definitely protective. There's a protective aspect of Mercury as a divinity. You'll often see him with like, you know, sheep over his shoulders, a god of flocks and like a shepherd, protective that way. But there's also obviously a mercantile aspect to Mercury. So Mercury has a protective, it has a wealth aspect, and it also has obviously a very strong social for writers and artists and that sort of energy as well. So that's what's on the horizon. And if you are able to, it would be great to have you on board as one of our members. If you're not able and you're still interested, let me know. And I'll go ahead and try to take on a few people as pro bono and until things start improving. All right, so I'm going to call it a day for now, and I hope you can get out there and call on. If you can't get out there with the sky, you can still use these times that I've given you and just face the directions I was talking about. Maybe draw one of these sigils on a piece of paper, or just, you know, just be reverent and just speak to these beings. And I believe that you will find results beyond your expectations. That has certainly been the case for me. Back when I first started speaking to the sky, speaking with the sky, I guess, you know, I didn't really have any expectations. I just knew that it was something I felt called to do. And they started talking back, yo. And I was like, wow. And it's been something that has just grown and grown ever since. And so I cannot, you know, and yes, I probably, you know, being a fire sign, yeah, I can be a little dramatic at times, but I can't possibly overstate the value that the relationship that I have with the sky has brought to my life and to my practice. It's great medicine for tough times. So with that, blessings to everyone. Hope you stay safe and protected and taken care of. Until next time, namaste.